And thank you. It looks like we have several people joining us virtually. I know that Kiona, our vice chair, just texted and said she was on her way, so she'll be joining us late. But I'd like to get us started with roll call if we can. And if you would, please, when your name is called, let us know where you are actually attending from. And I'm Kathy Zenda Wilson, Chair of the Human Relations Board. I'm reporting in person at City Hall.
Thank you, Kathy. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Okay, good. Miss Wesley?
Good.
I don't see that she's here.
Mm-mm.
We know Kiona's running a little late. Mr. Asher?
I'm here and I'm at City Hall.
Thank you so much. Miss Metzger?
Yes, I'm here. I'm remote from Battle Creek.
Thank you. Donald Woodward?
I'm here and remote from Kalamazoo.
Thank you. Miss Herring? Showing as absent. Jeffrey Cotton? Also absent. Derek Freeman?
I'm here joining remotely from Battle Creek.
Thank you. Pastor Hooper?
He said he'd be in person.
Not seeing him. We'll come back and check him again in a minute. Miss Spencer?
I was at a meeting with her earlier today and it sounded like she'd be here, so she might just be running late.
All right, we'll check back on her. Miss Wardell? Is also absent.
Oh.
Roger Ballard? Commissioner Ballard? You got your mute on. I just need to know where you're reporting from. I can't hear you.
He said 1 minute.
He can't figure out how to unmute on his phone.
He's in the
How
car.
about this, Roger? Are you in Battle Creek? Give me a
No.
thumbs up. No. Are you in Kalamazoo?
Is he traveling?
He's traveling.
Oh. Oh, we can't read lips.
It's
No.
okay. If you get on mute later, we'll find out where you're reporting from. I don't know where I can't hear you. Sorry. Rebecca Fleury.
Here in person, City Hall.
Thank you. So we don't currently have a quorum, but we can come back and revisit that if you want to wait a few minutes.
Well, I see Amira and Kiona on the screen now, Alicia.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
I'm here, Kiona, and I'm actually pulling up at City Hall right now. So
Thank
I
you.
will say in person and come right in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kiona.
Yeah.
And,
Am I allowed around the table or?
Yes. Oh, no, please.
and Amora is just attending as public then?
No, Amira is still here until her term ends.
Okay. Amira Austin,
I'm not aware of.
Hi, here joining remotely from Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids. Thank you, ma'am.
Pastor Hooper just walked in, Alicia.
Excellent. Pastor Hooper, I see you're joining us in person. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Right.
Well, hello. Does that get us to,
So we have
Quorum?
quorum. Yes, ma'am.
thank you everyone for being here. Welcome guests. Hello. We will get started in a minute. We're going to take care of some business first. So I would like to ask for approval of the minutes from our last meeting.
So
Chuck has moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Any communications, Alicia?
There are none.
All right, committee reports?
There are none.
Okay. Community Review Oversight Board. Oh, and hello, Jeffrey Cotton just arrived, Alicia.
Wonderful. I've got him down now as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly and Rebecca to give us an update on where things stand with the Community Oversight and Review Board.
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you first. No, you.
No, you. I'm just kidding. So this is an ongoing discussion. Certainly we recognize that it had been turned over from the HRB to the DEI office. And then what does that look like, knowing that we'd already been in front of the city commission with a draft? And so we are still working through what those next steps look like. Certainly Kimberly has given us an outline about, the DEI framework around the formation and the consideration of a community oversight board, citizens review board. And Chief Bagley and Jill and I met with her, and we have to now give a summary to the commission, and then we'll report back to the HRB.
Okay. Anything to add?
Did I say that? Did I miss any pieces?
No.
Okay.
So I know that you were looking for some input from the Human Relations Board before it goes back to committee, and we'll stand ready then for when and if that's ready for us to do. I know there are some legal things that you have to try and get in
Yes.
place before we do that. Okay. I know this has been a long, arduous process, and I appreciate everybody's patience and commitment to seeing it through. It feels like we are getting closer, and so I just want our appreciation to everybody who's done what we need to do, especially, and I think I want to lift up the fact that part of the benefit of this this board is that we don't all share the same thoughts on everything, and we're able to have really good debate about what's necessary, be respectful, and still move the work forward. And so I just want to thank you again for all of your continued commitment to that. And yeah.
When you present it to the commissions, it would be a presentation or in the form of a workshop.
That hasn't been determined yet. Again, they've seen a draft, but, out of, respect for timing, the DEI office wasn't in place at the time that happened. And so taking a few steps back and taking a breath, getting Kimberly caught up, knowing that we had a couple of studies that recommended it, but needing some more meat and understanding and more community voice from what we heard here. What does that look like going forward? That's what we're trying to figure out right now. And yes, it is a long process. And then you insert a lot of the bureaucracy that is the city. But ultimately it is the commission who would be asked to create this or amend something that's already on the books, which I think we've kind of determined that it would be an amendment of that, but what does that look like? That's to be determined. I think Kimberly has laid out a plan utilizing, a task force, and that's what we're all trying to look and frame going forward. Whereas last night at the commission meeting, we certainly had some public comment asking for an update on that. And so we will be providing that to the city commission and to the HRB as well.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
So
Oh, Roger's touching his husband right now.
I don't think he wants to put on mute again because it was too
No, he
difficult.
doesn't want to get off.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you very much for that, and we'll stay tuned. Any updates we get in between meetings that are possible to share by email that don't with any of our Open Meetings Act, we'll make sure we share. All right, we wanted to share the bulk or save the bulk of this time together to really focus on this language access discussion. And I know this is a priority of the DEI office as well as Human Relations when we're talking about access. Hello, Dina. When we're talking about access to the city and ways to engage. And so I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly to get us started. And Dina is here, Alicia. Welcome, Dina.
Thank you. Also, Whitney Wardell and Leanne Wesley have both joined us virtually.
Oh, perfect. Welcome, everyone.
Okay. All right. So the DEI office has partnered with the communications department to conduct a language access assessment. We do have a limited English proficiency plan in place, which you received a copy of, which was adopted in 2017. And we have formed a task group that is going to provide a survey to all employees to just learn how employees are utilizing translation and interpretation in their daily duties. We also want to assess this plan to see what needs to be updated, what things maybe are not in place or have not been happening, such as training to all staff, so that we can enhance this plan and put together training recommendations for all staff to ensure that we are providing optimal services to our community members, and that everyone at employee with the city understands how to access or provide these services. So that, we just launched that this month. And so that'll be an ongoing process through the end of the year. But I thought it might be valuable for this board to hear from employees that are currently providing translation and interpretation services on behalf of the city. And just give a little bit of a summary of their experience. And, you know, their involvement with task group and what they're hoping to see going forward. So I know Michelle is here and I'll allow her to introduce herself, and then Irma may be joining us. She had a unexpected appointment, so she's hoping to be able to join us if she can. So turn it over to Michelle.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't really know kind of like where you guys want me to take this conversation. I can easily talk about this for a whole day probably, and maybe not even cover everything. And certainly having the experience of one employee who speaks only one other language besides English would, you know, keeping that in mind. And then working with community development and not in the other divisions per se as my primary job duties, keeping that in mind. So I guess I'll just kind of take you along on my journey. I've been interpreting for my family since I could remember. I think since I've been like in the 1st or 2nd grade, I remember interpreting for them. When it came to anything from hospital to medical to billings to legal issues to just like literally anything that you can think of. So then a few years ago, I was presented with the opportunity that VOSA's offers is to go through a interpreting training that covers like how to become an interpreter for your community. And it excludes legal interpretation. So anything that really has to do with legal matters is not covered in this training that I took. So I can only really scratch the surface without doing a disservice to families when it comes to legal issues. But it's better to have some resource or a resource than no resource. So I'll do often kind of find myself in this kind of like gray area, like crap, I feel like this is going into a legal matter and I'm supposedly not equipped for this. I don't have the training and the hours of service to be able to do this, but how many interpreters do we have in the city and how many legal interpreters do we have, right? I've talked to the court system across the street and they also don't have a lot of interpreters to rely on either for our priority languages. So I think there is a threshold of what a population, like a number regarding the population that lives in an area that can be prioritized according to like our Title VI, which is like a, federal thing where we are obligated because we receive federal and state funding to provide interpretation for the people that live there, as long as their population equals this many people or this percentage, right? So I know so far the Latino and the Burmese population have that right just based on our last census. I can imagine that our Swahili community will reach that threshold in the next few years. But so the interpretation training that I've been able to have not only prepared me to interpret for the languages that I know how to speak, but it also covered cultural sensitivity training. And so just because I can't speak, your first language doesn't mean that I don't know how to advocate for you or recognize when you need an interpreter to like step in or when you need just like further assistance, and so then my division that I work for, which is community development under the community services department, was hiring for an intake specialist position in 2021. And they had as a qualification for filling the position bilingual preferred. So I applied for the position because someone internally let me know that they were hiring, and the interview process was great. I think that I really enjoyed the STAR process that we utilize at the city. When I was offered the position of intake specialist, I, just kind of wondered how many other applicants did they interview who were bilingual and in what languages? And they told me that I was the only one. And that it was actually a new qualification that was put into their standard for applying for this position. And they kind of just let me know that it was because historically, the then manager, Chris Lucier, understood that we have a population that is greatly underserved because we offer programs to the community that our dollars are only being spent towards the Latino population. Under like 1% of the people we're serving is Latino community. And so he's like, well, if you look at the census, we have, this many Latinos living in our area and we're not servicing them. And I can't think that it's because they don't need the help, so it's just that we're not attracting them. They're not like trusting us as a city program. So we think that by hiring someone who's bilingual, it will, increase our workflow and increase the amount of money that we're spending and to help that community. And so I was like, oh, really interesting to know that this is an added qualification that someone went out of their way to like put onto a hiring process. And then I also inquired about how many other bilingual staff worked in City Hall. And they said no one that they could think of. Luckily, the same day that I got hired, one other Latina got hired. And so that's my colleague, Vanessa. So now there's 2 employees that are bilingual working in City Hall. And so, so we've built a good rapport, and she started in another division. And when we were hiring in my division, I was like, I recruited her. So in our office, we have 2 bilingual staff. And I think our team has benefited greatly from that because I have transitioned out of the intake role to a different role. And that's where Vanessa stepped in as an intake to cover the intake role. And Chris Douglas is here today. He's our rehab coordinator. Just thought in case anybody had questions about how it has benefited the team as a whole. I thought that, someone from the team could speak on that. So he utilizes our service a lot whenever he's in the field and he's like, oh, I'm talking to a Spanish speaking family. Let me see if Michelle or Vanessa are available. Let me call them and have them interpret for me over the phone because that is an option. So just since I got hired, I've just kind of been something I learned over the years is that it's really great for me to feel like I can have a upper hand on someone with more experience than me for a job, but just being able to qualify for something that maybe the majority of the applicants can't fulfill, like being bilingual. That's like one point that I get to, have an upper hand on from someone else. And, but it also actually, in my experience, I'm like, wow, every time that I am providing this additional service to a organization who historically hasn't been serving the Latino community, it's added work. It's exhausting. It's how is my team accepting the workflow and the disruption to their workflow by needing an interpreter or just, to being culturally sensitive to other, to other people who they're not used to working with. And so all of those were questions that I was lucky enough to come in here with as a city employee. And that was kind of received really well. Again, with my manager, he was like, those are really good questions. We'll keep an eye, we'll track that stuff. I countered HR when they offered me the position and just kind of said, hey, is there any way that I can start off as being a higher salary than the base salary? Because I can already tell you, like, we're gonna be super successful in the only thing that needs to happen is for one Spanish speaking family to be served, and it's gonna
Open the
spread
door.
like wildfire. That there's someone in the city that speaks Spanish and that can help them, and so then we had so much navigating to do. So not only did I have to, but not only did it open doors for my division to be able to serve our community better, for federal dollars to be spent, to service a population that had been underserved. But then other divisions were then coming to me saying, hey, like, I guess this person is asking for you by name directly, like they want to pay their water bill but they have other questions. They have questions on their property taxes, like why have their property taxes increased? Or code compliance was a big one too. Our code compliance division does a really good job at making sure that our communities and our neighborhoods look good. But with that comes a lot of legal terminology when they send their letters out to people. When they don't send them out in Spanish, which is or any other language, which is like, again, we have to accommodate and evolve. So where we're at right now, we can only offer it in English. So it's nice to know that I've just been able to save a few people, and I've also experienced some really bad like heartbreaks. One person, I couldn't help them in time because they were so far along in the process and communication just was way off, that their home got demolished a week after they came to me and said, can you help me understand this? I've been fighting with the city for all of this time. And of course, there's responsibilities on both ends. As a city employee, I can definitely say that we try our best at the city and we do what we can with what we have. And a lot of responsibility too needs to be put back on people buying properties in our city and stuff like that. But then there's like education, and when you don't speak the language or the resources available to learn about how to do anything are all in English, then maybe we should be able to give some like leniency or some grace period or something. So that's something that I'm kind of like battling with, just seeing that, like, man, if you just would have had a good communication facilitator at the front end. But then I do also see Spanish speaking families who are on top of things. They don't want to be at risk of losing their homes from the get-go. So they do, like, even though they don't speak the language, they're just like on top. They're in here asking questions. They bring a family member that does, or a friend that does speak English. And like, so it's both ways, but some are scared and they're like, I don't know how to speak the language. I don't know anybody here. And so I'm just going to keep writing it out. And then we have repercussions, like my home gets demolished. And but then there was another incident where there was a miscommunication between the family and the inspector. They wanted to pull a permit to enclose their porch. And so they pulled the permit because word has been spreading that, hey, if you don't do this stuff right, like, you're going to get your home demolished, and there's someone in the city that can help you interpret. And we've put on workshops, right? Like, I've been partnering with VOCES and with the Battle Creek Area Association of Realtors to put on home buying workshops. So even if you already own a home, or if you're seeking to own a home, we are putting on workshops that are held by real estate agents, and lenders in the area come to this and help present, and they're translated in Spanish and Burmese that same night. Like, so English speakers, Spanish speakers, Burmese speakers can come just to try to educate people to prevent these things that we've been witnessing are happening. And so this family was like, oh, I attended your workshop like a few months ago and I want to do work to my home. So I think I have to pull a permit, right? So I was like, possibly, let's go down the hall and find out if you do. So they did, they pulled a permit. Apparently there had been some communication happening with no interpreter, just because the family did seem to like defend themselves okay enough in English to where the person helping them from the city didn't feel like they needed to acquire interpretation services. So what happened was that the work, some of the work got done. They called the inspector like they were instructed to do after my meeting with everybody. The inspector said, oh, yep, looks good. You don't need to call me back until you finish the work, is what the family heard and understood. So when they finished the work, enclosed the porch, did the electrical, put up drywall, painted, the whole 9 yards, calls back the inspector, hey, I finished the work, come inspect the work so that I can, complete my due diligence with you guys. Oh, we didn't see how the electricity was wired. We didn't see you, what parameters of the stud you bought were used. So we don't know the size of the studs. We don't know what nails you used. And they're like, well, you told us to not call you until we finished last time you came out and told them. Oh, that's not what I said, So they wanted them to remove the drywall, take everything down so that they couldn't examine the electrical. And this family was like just in tears in my office, talking to me and my manager saying like, I did what I was told to do. And I now have to I have to throw away the money that I put into enclosing my porch, and then come up with that same money again to do it again. And I understand that the city just wants to make sure that we're providing a safe home for us and the next family that moves in here. But it's like, I don't like, so they were really stressed. So luckily that situation got fixed where they came to me and I had to kind of like step in. And luckily the team, Rick, who's our code compliance manager, worked with us, and he was like, okay, I'll take meetings with you guys and see what we can do. He asked them for a drawing of exactly what they did without giving them really any guidance. And apparently they installed the studs in the right size and used the right nails and everything so they can come up with that blueprint. And so then he was like, I feel good, and I can tell from this going to the home that you used the stud you're claiming to have used, the size. And so I will believe this, and I will make sure that I'm going to inspect the home. I'm going to make sure that the porch feels good. And so they were just really thankful. So it's we learned a couple things. We learned that the family needs to also needs to advocate for themselves. They need to understand and not just feel like there's a level of understanding is good when it comes to something as detrimental as dealing with an entity as the city, or, anything major like that. And we should learn that if someone has an accent, or if you even have the slightest bit of doubt that this person may not understand what I'm saying, that you should request interpretation services, which we do pay for, is my understanding. We have a phone service that we pay for, who we have a contract with, and I interpret over the phone a lot for my team, and it works.
So, Michelle, if I might, this seems like just even in your division, this is a very complicated thing, right? There's all these different layers to, it's not just we offer interpretation, because you don't do it across the city yet. Although if there's opportunities by phone, I have a couple questions. First, Are staff across the different divisions trained to know when to look for those kind of things and how to access those phone resources? Do we know that, or is that part of the assessment you're doing?
That's part of the assessment.
Okay.
I believe when this plan was originally created, and Rebecca can obviously, because I wasn't here, that did happen. That was part of the implementation of this plan. But obviously 6 years have passed, changeover in staff, et cetera. I don't know that is still taking place, and that's one of the things that we want to assess.
Okay.
So I'd like to add, well, first, thank you, Michelle. That was wonderful and very informative. I definitely appreciate it. Just to add to the answer of the question that Kathy asked, I sit on a couple boards and committees for the city, and I strongly believe the answer is no to that question. One particular experience recently happened for the zoning of appeals board that I sit on. Clearly, there was a language barrier. They had their daughter interpreting. Their daughter had to miss school to make it to this meeting because this meeting only takes place during school hours. She's interpreting to the best she can. The language barrier was so evident, and they had already been given X amount of extensions. There at that time appeared to me, and again, I was new to this board, that there was no sensitivities around this. I never once saw anyone take a pause and say, hey, clearly there's a barrier here. Let's take a pause. Let's get an interpreter. Hey, there's a Michelle, or hey, there's a Vanessa. I even asked, do we have someone who can come in and interpret? Because I'm clearly seeing this language barrier. I'm not sure if anyone else is seeing what's obvious. And the answer was like, there was a pause, and then there was a no, and someone will reach back out. And I, to this day, don't even know if the person, it kind of seemed like things were left in limbo, but the grace of giving extensions was running to an end is how I took that particular situation. But I'm like, why? If we're not providing them with the resources and tools they need to get through this particular situation, so the outcome will most likely be an unfortunate one for them. So just to say no. And then I do have a couple questions that I would like to ask. One is, you did speak of you work with voices and word of mouth being very powerful in the community. Both things are true, but how are we making those in the community aware that you and Vanessa are here in your resource to them when it comes to this awesome bilingual resource that you do offer for your division?
Good question. Well, I can speak on what we have control over. And so we've dedicated marketing dollars in my division to ensure that our new website, so there's a city website that covers some of the programs that community development offers to the city, but there's a new website. It's called gettheletout.cc, and we got to publish that website from scratch with a marketing team outside of Lansing. And so we made sure that there were options to get that translated in the Spanish and Burmese. So you can translate that site in those languages at least. And then our brochures that cover the programs that we cover and stuff they're both in English and Spanish. And we just hope that because they're covered in English and Spanish, that people will know that there's someone that's Spanish speaking that can take their calls, because we provide our contact information.
Okay.
And so if we're providing something in Spanish, we just have assumed, and maybe it's not the best practice, but we've just assumed that since someone who's Spanish speaking can read the brochure, they'll know that if they call, there will be someone who can respond to their questions in Spanish. And then outside of our door, when you walk by room 104, you'll see a bulletin board covering some of our programs, and they're in English and Spanish. And it'll also say, call, if you speak Spanish, call this number. So I don't think beyond that so I work for community development, and I have I can push my team to my previous manager and Vanessa drafted a whole interpretation and language service policy and procedure of how to utilize us as interpreters, what signs to look for, the importance of language access, cultural sensitivity, just cover, it's like a 10-page document that we drafted to use internally within my office. I believe that my manager is part of a managers meeting that covers the managers of community services. And he presented that policy and procedures to everybody and just would always say, hey, if any of you guys ever feel like this is a thing that you want to utilize, like I give my staff time. They can flex time, they can, because it's additional time. It's time I'm getting removed from my work. It's time then that division needs to pay for if it's more than 15 minutes, right? We've put a threshold on that as well, that we need to charge our time to them. And so hopefully that doesn't make them shy away from wanting to use us because they have to put money and skin in the game. But if you don't have a manager who supports that and is bringing that in discussions in larger meetings, since he's left, I've barely had a request. And until I was late today because I left my office early to come early to kind of gauge where you guys wanted to be at. There was a family downstairs that spoke Spanish who was waiting for our city attorney's office to go down and help them with a card, like a letter that they got in the mail saying like, hey, Ian Wright is folks helping you, or is your point of contact for this situation. And I didn't know if 211 had already served them. Like I didn't, so, and I saw them twice because I went to the bathroom, went back. So, and then I came upstairs and they were still sitting there and I was like, oh, like, let me just see what's up. So I don't think it's a coincidence that that my services haven't been sought since,
The importance of a manager role
Right.
who's advocating. Yeah.
That's the key takeaway
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Because they're in spaces that we're not in, which is fine. So I don't know how else we're doing that. VOSAS knows that we are here. And VOSA, we fund a position at VOSAS that helps with housing navigation, who we are funding with our public service money that we get from Community Development Block Grant to help. So they can start the process. And then if anything that we need to be involved in, then they know we're here.
Thank you.
We attend events.
You have a question? Sure.
Well,
And I do
another-
questions?
So I'm sorry. Yeah, my second one, you touched on, you received training, but it excluded providing legal interpretation. So who do you refer them to if they need assistance with? So there's no one?
Nobody.
Wow.
I either do it and then just let them know I am not a legal interpreter. I let the family I'm interpreting for know that, and I let the people who are, on the legal side know.
The gap in the in overall community then. not
I
even
am
just for the
happy
city.
to,
Wayne doesn't have an interpreter.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Do we
I
know if
mean-
legal aid does?
not that I know, because I've been in city attorney's office multiple times and they've
Seems like they do.
relied on me, so.
Okay.
And
I'm
asked,
happy to
right.
take those trainings and stuff, but then how,
We definitely need someone. I ran into a situation where one of my neighbors needed something and they kept being referred to legal aid. They called, left several messages. No one called them back. So to answer your question, is that a service that's available in legal aid? If so, no one's responding back to folks. And these conversations started back in the beginning of August for them to get an interpreter. So it's very unfortunate.
and both
Again,
of them
another
won't
drop.
touch it, as far as I know. If it's legal interpretation, they don't have a legal interpreter, they don't offer legal interpretation training. I don't know if it's because it costs more, or because they don't have the teacher for it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they don't offer it, and so they won't touch it, especially because their
There's probably some liability.
dollars that they get to operate would probably be jeopardy.
Chuck and then Jeff. Hang on, Chuck, we had a question real quick and then you, Jeff.
Just, it's a two-part question, of course, it's not easy. But, your housing programs, your rehab and lead safe especially, or you mentioned get the lead out. Have you seen an impact of translating the publications? Have you seen an impact on
Like an increase in number of
communities, yeah,
families?
Increase of Hispanic or Burmese families that have applied.
Yep. So in 2021, when I got hired, we got to report on part of that year. We've been able to report on all of 2022. And in the last 10 years before I got hired, we've serviced less than 1% of our money has gone to Latino communities. This year, 10% of close to 10%, because it's like 9.7 something. So close to 10% of our minor home repair rehab dollars have gone towards Latino communities, and more than 13% of our Let's Safe program dollars have gone towards.
So because Let's Safe is countywide, at least the intake part is countywide.
Yep. Correct.
Are you also then extending your services outside the city limits, like to Albion, Homer, places that may need some interpretation?
So I know that BOSA's housing liaison has to do countywide. And we do countywide too. But I don't think that our efforts have been, so all of our brochures, our mailings and stuff go out to the county. So I think that's the extent of it, but I can say I've interpreted for someone, a family in Albion or in Marshall or anything. I can't say that I have in my role with the city.
Just curious.
So that's a good question.
Jeffrey?
I was just wondering if, as far as that legal interpretation resource, have y'all checked with like the county or the sheriff's office? We got the INS facility down there. I'm pretty sure they do some type of legal translation down there. Yeah, they would have, I would think.
Yeah, and then the question then becomes, if they do have someone that interprets, how many for what languages and how swamped are they? Like how many cases is one person, like let's say it's one person that is interpreting for a language, because it's a thing where need more people doing. We have the demand, but we need to prioritize it.
Yeah, the funding.
How many of that?
Oh, yes. sorry.
And
Thank you
how
very
much of that are they expected to not just interpret, but then, I don't know, how many job responsibilities do
So I
they?
think the idea of
Case.
do we need to be, maybe this is a community-wide discussion and not just the city, but I think starting with the city and understanding what we're doing is good. Pao Shan? Yes, your hand is up. Did you have a question or a comment?
No, I think that's actually the arrow. That's not his hand.
Oh, it's the mouse
It's the
over
mouse.
the, sorry.
Yes,
It is.
that's
It's
true. You said that, I'm like, no, I don't
It
think
was the
so.
pointer, Pao Shan. We thought it was your
No,
hand.
that's the
Rhea.
mouse, but we hover over them.
Yeah, I was
That's
waiting. But I just had a question to Chief Bagley on what interpretation services the
That's what my
police
question was.
department have.
Yeah, thank you. And I was gonna ask the same
I
also.
didn't even know he was back there.
Yeah, just ask, I know you can't speak for the fire department, but I had the question for both. Are there, and so I'd love to explore a little bit more about what your experience has been with the police department at least.
Sure, we have relationships, we're contract with VOSAs, and we've used them several times in the past. I also have 2 Spanish-speaking officers and 1 civilian staff personnel that works at front desk that also is bilingual. We've used services, depending upon the situation, we've contacted other agencies and jurisdictions, MSP, which has helped us. We had an incident where we needed a specific dialect out of the Sudan. So a Sudanese, but it wasn't the typical Sudanese. It was, there's multiple different dialects, and we were able to, just through our relationships and partnerships through the Michigan State Police, we had someone from Oakland County come over and do those translations for us as well. So we have, sometimes it's not as timely as we'd like, but we start looking out. I think, Jeff, there is some opportunity there with INS through the Sheriff's Department. I'm just not sure exactly how many different languages that are available. But we have some phone calls and a phone tree that we reach out through for our partners around the state, and we're usually able to get plugged into the right person that can lend a hand.
And Chief, what training do your officers get to know how to work with somebody who does not speak English?
Well, we don't have any annual training for that. We have some stuff that we have officers that are on scene that they probably haven't had since oh gosh, I would say their PTO phase, where they do their orientation. Do we have a 2-week orientation process where it's initial, where we go through the resources specifically for getting interpretations. Some of it's a phone tree, some of it's they'll start out by seeking the officers, or we've called the Burmese Center or the Congolese, and we've gone that route as well. So the training usually is limited to the 2 weeks, and that's basically if you don't have that skill set, then here's some numbers that you need to call or get a hold of your sergeant, and we can dive deeper into it.
Yeah, because I think this, Michelle, you had spoke to it when you first started talking about language is one thing, but the cultural sensitivity is another, right? Like the idea of the respect or the patience that is required in working with somebody who can't speak English. I remember years ago being part of a team that was trying to help the Burmese population get settled, and the number it took a while, but we learned that the response, if they didn't know, the answer was always yes. If it was somebody who was English speaking asking the question, it didn't matter what the question was. They were just always saying yes. And what we found is that many were like admitting things that weren't true. Like they were asked if they did something wrong, they didn't know what they were being asked, and they would just say yes because that's what they thought was expected of them. That was a learning. That was back when, I'm not even sure who was chief at the time, but we had conversations with him about that, right? So I'm just curious, like how that has permeated the department by way of trying to appreciate some of the cultural differences that might happen. Because if somebody just says yes to you, you assume that they understand you, but that's not always the case, right? And so I just wonder about some partnerships to do some of that training beyond even just translation or interpretation.
Well,
And I should add, I'm sorry, Chief.
Oh, no, go ahead. Usually, they also receive training within the academy itself when it comes. Things slow down dramatically. I mean, it really slows down when we run into those barriers. And then we're very methodical moving forward because it's all about getting it right. So we everything slows down, and then we go about trying to bring the right resource into that situation. So, and if that takes, a lot of times in the situation of post-incident, we are afforded that opportunity to slow it way down, and then we can really dial into what is actually needed.
And Kimberly, before you go, just that brings up a question for me, Chief. So what about our 911 dispatch? And so is that a place where if somebody's calling in and they're not speaking English, what happens at that point so that the officers are alerted or the fire department is alerted that there's somebody who can't speak English that they're going to respond to?
Certainly, the consolidated dispatch is its own entity. I am not sure all of the relationships that I do know that they do have some bilingual call takers and dispatchers, but I mean, I can get with the director, Mr. Armitage, and see, but again, I know they have processes in place, but because it's his shop, I don't know to the full extent of what they have.
Yeah, that might be important for us to get our arms around, just because that's going to be the point of contact for many of these experiences and interactions. Kimberly?
Just piggybacking on that, part of the assessment is looking at where are all of the points of contact.
Okay.
Involved with city services. I wanted to add that 2 members of the police department, one an officer and one the front desk person that Chief mentioned, are both on the language access task force.
Okay.
And have really helped inform the process based on what they're experiencing in the police department and out in the field.
Is there any attempt when recruiting to really prioritize bilingual staff, like when Michelle was hired? Are we looking at that same kind of process in other departments?
Certainly, and we're also looking to try to incentivize that financially, bilingual officers. But yes, are we making it's the pool that we're trying to pick from, right? That's always would be advantageous for a candidate to come in and put that on their application to be considered. So without a doubt.
And Rebecca?
Yeah, so we are also just finalizing a language incentive pay so that bilingual employees can have an incentive, and that we hope that can also be a recruitment tool if they know the city has that in place. It's taken a long time, but I know it's finalized because I signed it. So it'll be rolling out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about things like the career academies at Battle Creek Public Schools. And if law enforcement is one of the career academies. I don't know if it is it?
Public
Does it mean
safety,
Public
yeah.
safety? Like, this should be an element that's
Yes.
part of that, right? Like, if you are bilingual, this might be something you want to consider, because there's pay incentives and you're gonna be doing an incredible service to the community if you can approach it that way.
Yeah, something that's like a little scary to me is that I can say I'm doing a great job and that my division's doing a great job. But then, Chuck had an interesting question today. You do service the county with one of your programs, Michelle. So then what are you doing? And so it's really only as far as I have to depend on my teammates to request our services, me and Vanessa's services and translate. If they're not prioritizing it, if there's no reason for them to, because it's, I have to go out of my way, or, I have to take an extra step, or, it's gonna take a little bit longer.
Inconvenient or inefficient.
Yeah, and so then, why do I need to do this? And that's something that is scary across the board in what not just in the city, but what focusing on the city, that it's really dependent on the person who is assisting people, and in what stage is like how to recognize these things. So the training piece is obviously important, but then what are we going to do after the training is offered to make sure that, like, okay, so you serviced X amount of people that were Latino or Burmese or
Non-English speaking.
non-English speaking, and how many times did you request interpretation services, and like have like a quota or something? I don't know, some sort of way to like also measure and keep people accountable to utilize the service, because sure, I can learn something, but am I gonna follow through and prioritize it?
And
Some experience will, after some time, you'll know what to expect. Then I think you can make those determinations.
And I think we do what we measure, right? And
Right.
so are we incorporating those kind of questions into performance reviews for critical positions? Our supervisors trained to look for those kind of things in performance. Because that's how we change culture. It's not just to say this is what we're about, but it's really about changing the systems that people have to operate in.
I know we're getting short on time. Something that sat with me that Michelle touched on is how those code compliance letters go out and they're in English only, which is a huge disservice for our Spanish and Burmese speaking population. Is there a way that we can, if we cannot have those sent out in Burmese or Spanish, if we say we don't have the dollars, the time, the manpower, whatever the case may be, can we at least have an option where we list on there, if you need this interpreted, please contact this number? Something as simple as that may make all the difference.
Yeah. Well, even with, I'm thinking about making technology our friend here. Are there QR codes that could say something about, just scan here and it will either translate it for you or get you to somebody who could translate for you or interpret? So we don't have to get into the solutions right now, but I think there's probably ways, and that leads me to my other question. So from the task group that you've put together, Kimberly, in the process that you're about to undergo, what role would you like the Human Relations Board to play in support of that work? Anything specific?
May I put some thought into that?
Please.
And report back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Talking about it.
Yeah, other than just talking about it, right? I think we all want to be useful. And so if there's a way as that group progresses to think about a role that we could play that would be helpful, I think that
Yes.
we want to position ourselves in that way. Whether it's listening sessions in the community around that, if it's partnership development that any of us have the ability to network around, just thinking about
Yeah, I
that.
appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I'd like to pose it to the full task group as
Sure.
well.
Thank you.
So I'll definitely circle back.
All right, good.
And then real quick, just to add, Keon, because I have heard, I do try to watch your meetings. And so I know this is like an important topic for you regarding code compliance. They have translated the permits to Spanish and Burmese. So the letters, they have not prioritized that yet, or they haven't like launched them to be sent out simultaneously in different languages. But if you come in inquiring about, hey, I got this letter, or I want to pull a permit to correct the code enforcement, or just to do any sort of rehab in my home, those are translated.
Thank you.
One last thought. when somebody calls City Hall, so I just had to call Xfinity the other day about something. And I was asked to push 1 for English and 2 for Spanish and whatever it was, I had to choose my language. I know we're not there yet with
311.
yeah, but is there, just thinking about that, because if I'm calling, is there a way for us for people to know that somebody could be there?
When you
Um,
call the community development line, yes. When you call the city line, no. But even if you call the city's line and you get transferred to my division, no.
Okay,
So you'd have to have our direct line.
yeah, so people
hear
have to
those
know.
options.
So we've got a lot of work to do. So,
Yes.
yeah.
That's kind of what I was thinking when Chief Bagley said, this training is done at the academy. Well, for some people, that's 20 years ago.
Well, and
Some people
it's
10 years ago.
and it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, it needs to
Right.
be ongoing.
Yeah,
And if I'm in the field and something happens, okay, so where was that number I got last year?
Yeah.
Is it in my back pocket? Probably not. Is
Yeah.
it in my phone? Also probably not. And so even just those simple things, like in the moment,
Yeah.
then what?
Yeah.
Are you
We
taking
actually
someone to
entered a-
jail or
And
not?
that was at CA, we had, were you at Coaches when we were doing those tests? And having someone contact from transportation or one of our services and following up is how'd this go for you? So,
like a secret shopper almost.
Almost.
People asking, yeah.
Almost, there
Yeah.
was a couple of painful
I
experiences.
have noticed that that's the only really way you get to submerge yourself and see what the
Yeah,
experience
we
is.
had to see where our weaknesses were, and a lot of it was just people didn't fully understand the process to utilize interpretation,
Yeah.
or were intimidated by it,
Yeah.
or, so there's a
Well,
lot
and
of training that needs to be
I mean,
done.
I would love to see I know our communications team is made up of 2 people and they really want to be a partner in this task force and in this rollout of developing language access. But I would really love to see like a position that is like, that this is their role, like to make sure that we have these trainings, to make sure, which I know our DI officer is doing. It's just so much. And
Yeah.
so I would just really like,
Yeah.
That'd be like a communication specialist, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I would just encourage the city to consider like human-centered design. Like, what do people experience when they walk into the buildings, when they make phone calls, when they're interacting online? And it's sometimes not through like secret shopper kind of methods. I don't like that language, but it's somebody who actually goes through it for you.
It's more, it's a
This is-
training, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it has a component of intimidating staff.
Yeah.
But it also shows where your weaknesses are.
Yeah,
So
for
as you
sure.
build on it.
Yeah,
Even walking in the buildings, what signage is there?
yeah, yeah. And
like services offered last year when we get the vote out. One of our staff, not staff, one of our community members wanted to come in and we were offering like the ballots and stuff being printed in-house. But when they asked for it in Spanish, they said, well, you can go to the link and print it yourself, but we were offering
it
the
in English for
printing
everybody
in
else.
English,
Mm.
but then we would, and then, so it was just confusing. If you have the link and you're offering the printing service, then why can't I get that?
Yeah.
And this, it was just weird.
Yeah, and we have to know that those things happen. Well, this has been very informative, and I think a really
Thank
good
you.
start. Thank you, Michelle, very much, and thank you, Kim, for bringing it to us. Thank you both as well for being here.
Yeah. Thank you. I
Oh my
know.
gosh, it is
I
5
know.
o'clock, so we've got some priority things we need to cover in the next 2 minutes.
Yes.
And that is, we have conflicts the next 2 months with the date of the Human Relations Board. And I know, Rebecca, you were checking to see if there was what we could do about changing those dates or.
Yep, I mean, it has to be publicized.
Okay.
And you need a quorum, so it would be, I think what I suggested is it might be better for this group. If there's another date you want in October and or November to decide while you have the quorum here.
Yeah.
So that we can,
Okay.
we would know when to publish a different date. We do have to publish a different date because we publish the schedules a year in advance.
Okay, so I'd like to prioritize that right now. Kiona and I we both have conflicts.
Can we ask
now.
for public comment since it's just now 5 o'clock?
Oh, it is 5 o'clock. Yes, please. Is there any public comment?
Sure.
Yes, please.
I just want to say that I appreciate you guys making language access a priority coming from a mother that is an immigrant that speaks Spanish. I've seen many times where it is hard for people that don't speak English as a primary language to come into public spaces and speak their mind. And having someone like a Michelle or a Vanessa that is able to kind of break that barrier and bring them comfort is important, and really making that a priority to follow our mission to ensure a safe, prosperous, culturally enriched community.
Thank you.
And can you just state your name for the notes?
Yeah, Tristan Brennan.
Yeah.
Thanks, we know you.
For anybody who doesn't know Tristan,
Yes.
now of record, thank you very much. Thank you. Any other public comments?
I would
Yeah.
say that I'm in the community development, and Michelle has been invaluable for interpretation purposes. We've got 5 or 6 families that we use it for interpretation a lot of times when we're doing construction. And we've had contractors also use her for interpretation that need to communicate with the homeowners.
Thank you. Can you restate your name for the?
My name is Christopher Douglas, and I'm the rehabilitation coordinator for the city of Battle.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Yes, so a date in October, it was initially scheduled for the 18th, which we can't make. So I'm wondering if the 25th works for folks. It's a week later. Any?
Works for me.
How that works for you? Works for you? How about the folks online? Does the 25th work for you? I see some head shaking, some thumbs up.
It looked like it worked for me.
Okay. All right, Alicia, do we need to take like a roll to see? Or no, we could just, it looks like we've got a majority. Okay.
Oh, correct, yep, just a
We will
majority.
move, yep, we will move till October 25th in October, and we'll address the November date in October. Because November, I also have a conflict. My fall is gonna be horrendous. Anybody wants to do any body swap with me, they can. But anyway, okay, we've got that done. You will? No, Rebecca, except yours. No, I don't want your job. Thank you very much.
She offered, anybody want to do a body swap? I'm like, I'm in.
Except Rebecca.
I know, right? Kathy, do we need to do anything to table the other agenda items
Yeah.
we didn't get to
Yeah,
for
thank
next
you.
month?
Yeah, so
Okay.
what I'd like to table till next month is a discussion about the time and duration of the meeting. As you can tell by today, an hour feels like not enough time for us to get through what we need to accomplish. And so I just want us to give some thought to extending the time. I don't think it can go beyond 5 o'clock though for city staff. So I think we need to move it up to 3:30 if that's, so just consider it right now. And then the idea of our promotion of boards and committees. So what are we going to be doing in the future to identify leadership for the board itself? So I'd ask that both of those get tabled until next month. Any open discussion in like a half a second? Does anybody heard anything that's on fire right now in the community that needs to be brought to our attention?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Dina.
I
and
just
then
heard of
Fiona.
I'll make it really quick.
Yes.
Incident that could have potentially been unsafe. A community member had a police officer knock on their door at 11 o'clock at night with no car anywhere in sight. They literally parked down the street and walked to their house based on a report from another community member that stolen earbuds were pinging at their house 12 hours prior.
Okay.
And the
okay.
person, female owned property, was afraid to open their door, asked why there was no car in sight. Police officer said, oh, I parked down the road because of something else, and then walked down here. And it pinged at 11 o'clock this morning. She's like, yeah, no, go.
Thank you.
So just a safety concern.
Yeah.
That whole thing seemed super odd.
So Chief might want to know.
She'll need to know some more details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
can give
please
you
just get with her.
deeper
That would be
details, but
great.
Just
Yep.
wanted to
Thank you.
bring that up.
Yes, that would be,
So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.
Fiona? and then-
So the community is asking for some sort of update or whom to contact in the absence of detective. I hope that's his position, Rabbit, who's currently out of the office. I think he was just out of the office through today, maybe. But folks were regarding the 11-year-old boy that's missing. Believe he may still be missing.
Chief, you want to answer to that?
By Claude Evans Park.
From Claude Evans Park. Chief 2 going on 3 days ago.
Yes, certainly. So, yeah, the detective has still been working it. The young man he has a phone with him. He has been, Facebooking. You're able to Facebook when he has connectivity. So he has been in contact with friends. We had went over to the grandmother's house earlier today, where he usually goes to when he has run away in the past. This is this is repetitive behavior to a certain extent. So we're still looking at, we've asked the mother to get the phone turned on to provide service to it. So then we can actually go in and ping it to see where the exact location is. So I know that they were working on that today, but I don't have an update. This has been a few hours ago. So we believe he's safe right now. We just don't know where he's at, but he's been hitting up friends when he has connectivity within the internet, vis-a-vis through Facebook, messaging them. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Yep. Jeffrey, Jim.
Oh, Chief, I actually had the same issue happen to me at my house a couple weeks ago. The police just was walking to my backyard. I still don't know why, but I was coming out of my shed in the back, and so I'll talk to Chief about that. But my real issue was, I wanted to ask for some help for some students trying to reach some individuals who specialize in maybe climate change. I don't know if we got a climate change expert in the city.
Well, the Sustainable BC Committee had probably the most knowledgeable person. Do you not want me to say?
No, I'm joking. I'm on that committee. Yes, I was gonna, I'll talk to you after.
Sustainable
Yes,
BC.
they'll be the best
All
way to
right,
go.
see Kiona.
Yep, we got it.
And Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm glad you're here, Michelle. There's a couple more students trying to, I guess, write a story on Hispanic Heritage Month, and they were trying to reach out to somebody.
Okay.
So if you want them to reach out to you, you can give me your information and I can have them contact you. They all go to Calhoun Area Career Center.
Nice. Yeah, just depending on where, what culture they're trying to speak on, in the Hispanic and Latino culture, then I can help make connections for sure.
All right, I'm gonna call this meeting to an end and look forward to seeing everybody in October. Those who are willing to stick around for a minute, we have a photo op because there's a Get Caught Reading Month in October, and I want to have a picture of the Human Relations Board to submit. And I brought some books for you to all hold up, so it looks like you're reading. Yeah, it'll be a little staged, but I know you're all readers, so I'm gonna trust that at some point you read. So for those of you who can stick around, and thank you, those of you who joined us virtually, we'll see you again in October. Thank you so much.
October 20th.